Hello everyone and welcome to another video in the Simplified opening series. This week we will take a look at one idea in the dragon variation of the Sicilian. So this one is dedicated to you dragon players, but also other players who would like to adopt the dragon but they are scared away from it because of the large amounts of theory they need to learn in the main line of the Yugoslav Attack. So this idea has been around for few years, but it never really caught on the mainstream, or at least, but lately has been employed by a lot of strong players, including Magnus Carlsen, and this basically means that it's time to take a better look at it. So what do I have in mind? Let's get going. e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, cd4, knight e4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, and we land into the dragon territory. Now, one very good thing about the dragon variation is that even though white has a lot of different setups against it, there's actually only one critical one against it, and that one is the Yugoslav attack. That one starts with bishop e3, when white wants to go f3, and then go queen d2, long castle, with or without bishop c4. So this is the only critical line against the dragon. So if black wants to learn the dragon, then all these other sidelines where white castle is short or any other setups, they can be easily dealt with and learned. And the black player could really be quite happy, because the only proper thing that can put them under pressure would be the plan with the bishop e3 and f3, the so-called Yugoslav attack. And it is exactly here that the new idea, or well, new, let's say novel, if not new because it's a bit unexpected idea, comes to the fore. So after bishop e3, all dragon players automatically start with bishop g7, and then we get normal theory f3, let's say castles, queen d2, knight c6. This is the starting position. When white chooses between bishop c4, this is the formerly, let's say, main line, but lately most problems have been posed after long castle, allowing d5, but white has quite a few options after that. And here the move orders become very important, because black does not play bishop g7 just yet, but starts with knight c6. So on the surface, to white at least, perhaps it shouldn't matter much, because okay, knight c6 is one of the moves that black plays in the dragon. We saw it via the bishop g7 move order. So white goes f3, still preparing queen d2 in long castle. And now comes the second bigger surprise, at least for the unprepared white player, and that is the move h5. Now the move h5, we probably by now everybody's used to the move h5 in the Sicilian, which stops attacks by g4 by controlling the g4 square. But here, apart from stopping g4, the move h5 has another idea. And that idea is very nicely demonstrated if white plays automatically. So in this position, white has two moves that are, let's say, consistent with the Yugoslav attack, and that those moves are queen d2 and bishop c4. So if white understands the idea behind black's move h5, he would choose the move bishop c4. Now, why is that? Well, because after queen d2, we will see another idea of the move h5. Black here plays knight takes d4, bishop d4, and bishop h6. And now we see the idea of h5. The rook defends the bishop on h6, and the bishop attacks the queen on d2, effectively stopping white from castling long if white moves the queen, or in case the bishops are exchanged after bishop e3, queen e3. White will manage to castle long, but after black's move bishop e6, important move to stop the white's bishop from developing to the most active square c4, black has a already very, very good position. Not only objectively, but also practically, because the following play is very easy. For example, even a disturbing check like bishop b5 does not affect black's play, because the simple king f8 and just walking towards g7, followed by queen a5, then one rook comes to c8, a6, b5, maybe doubling on the c file, and just black gets this automatic play on the queen side in a very, very good position. The same happens if white doesn't give the check, castle is long, then queen a5. And then, like I said, rook is coming to c8, threatening already rook c3, a2 pawn is under attack. Very easy, very smooth play for black in this position. So experienced dragon players should already recognize that this is fantastic for black. Before continuing, I would like to show you one very unexpected idea, if this wasn't unexpected enough so far, for black. After the move like a3, now normal and let's say natural would be just to castle short. Okay, then rook d4, rook fc8, then just maybe go rook c6, rook ac8, or rook ab8, b5, b4, and so forth with attack on the queen side. But the surprising idea is actually long castle. And I'm pretty sure I've never before seen a long castle by black in the dragon. And the idea is again to go king b8, rook c8, yeah, maybe double on the c file, where the king is safer on the, or let's say comparably safer on the king side, on the queen side rather than on the king side. So if you want to keep shocking your opponent, you can try castling long in the dragon. So this is the idea after the automatic queen d2. Alternatively, after bishop h6, white can try to avoid the exchange of the dark squared bishops, but that means that he can no longer castle long, because the bishop on h6 controls the c1 h6 diagonal. And generally speaking, I think all the critical plans, even in the Yugoslav attack, are those that where white castles long. So of course white can choose plans with short castle. I won't be looking at those in this video because I just think that they are not very critical, and I think black should be fine against them. So here I will be just considering plans where white tries to be aggressive and castle long. So here after queen f2, let's say just castle, bishop c4, bishop e6, yeah, and this is fine, yeah, especially let's say bishop e6, f e6. And again, dragon players will know that this structure is actually quite good for black because the e6 pawn is controlling the d5 square, limiting the mobility of the white knight. So that's the, let's say, I wouldn't call it a trap, maybe a positional trap or a let's say preparation trick if you want, yeah, that black can spring upon white after the automatic queen d2. So now you understand that if white is well aware of the idea behind h5, he would choose the move bishop c4. Yeah, so this is better. Now there is no point in taking bishop h6 because at least that doesn't really hit the white queen. So black develops with bishop d7, still waiting for that move queen d2, because even though now we have the difference of white's bishop being on c4 and white's black's on d7, so not as in the previous line, black doesn't get to go bishop e6 to control the a2 g8 diagonal. The idea of bishop h6 still works after queen d2. So let's check. Queen d2, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop h6. And now in the game, online game Firouzja Carlsen, Firouzja played bishop e3 and Carlsen just showed how black obtains very good play with natural moves. Bishop e3, queen e3, rook c8. Now the rook gains tempo against that bishop. Bishop b3, queen a5. And after long castle, queen c5. And this is again very comfortable, very good for black. If white doesn't exchange queens, then white can just start with attack on the queen side. And probably more critical here is to go queen f2 and not castle long in this case. And when white would likely play positions after bishop takes f6, e8 takes f6. So just to demonstrate, let's say castles. One short note: if white takes the pawn, then there is b5. So the pawn on b5 cannot be taken because queen a5 check at the end will follow, and the white will lose the bishop on a7. So bishop b3, b4 now, knight e2, and bishop e6. And this is good compensation for black, because after the exchange of the light squared bishop, white's queen side will be more vulnerable, and black can use the A and C semi-open files for counterplay. So normally white castles, and now either rook c8 or a6. The point being that either against both, some type of opposition after bishop takes f6, ef6 will happen. So let's just say rook c8, attacking the bishop, bishop b3, a6, now avoiding the capture. And now let's say bishop f6, because if white doesn't take on f6, black can consider e5. Yeah, so let's say rook a1, e5, bishop e3, takes, and bishop e6. And this is some sort of a normal position that can arise from the Najdorf variation, when black's control over the d5 square and control on the c file gives him sufficient play for equality. Therefore, bishop f6, ef6 leads to these typical, let's say, positions that can arise from the dragon sometimes, when the weakness of the d6 pawn is compensated by the unopposed dark squared bishop. Yeah, so the bishop is quite strong, controlling the dark squares, and this normally gives black sufficient compensation for the weak pawn structure. So again, the trick knight d4, bishop h6 works. So again, if white is smart, they would not play queen d2, but rather bishop b3. So still waiting. So in a way, it's a game of waiting. So black is waiting for white to play queen d2 in order to take on d4 and then go bishop h6, whereas white is waiting for black to go bishop g7 and then to go queen d2. So black now can go bishop g7, and soon he will, and I think black cannot win the waiting game. But before doing so, he can go knight a5. And this is part of the, well, this is the way black creates counterplay on the queen side in this variation, going after the bishop on b3. So queen d2. There is also a very nice game Ivanchuk Dubov played this year, 2024, which goes queen d3, bishop g7, long castle a6, king b1, and b5. And this is another way for black to obtain counterplay. He will take that bishop, then go b4, a5, a4, and so forth. So Dubov won this game very quickly in 21 moves, and you can take a look at it. But it's not that critical for the variation. But just bear in mind this plan of a6, b5. Yeah. So queen d2 is, let's say, more natural. Now there is no knight d4, and now finally bishop g7. I think this plan that I'm going to show you, I think it's somewhat better than what Dubov played at the same tournament in Jerusalem, again this year, 2024, against Jordan Van Forest, where he played rook c8 and then employed a very curious rook maneuver, but objectively he was worse. So I'll just show you quickly the moves to show you the rook maneuver, because I think it's worth noting. So rook c8, long castle, bishop g7, king b1, a6, still going for b5, yeah, as in the Ivanchuk game. h3, this prepares g4, so h4 to stop g4, yeah. Rook he1, and now this is the maneuver, rook h5. Yeah. So it's a very curious maneuver, even though the rook was soon forced to go back to h7 when white played knight d2, knight f4. Yeah. So just to show you the idea that you can keep in mind, but I think objectively it's better to go bishop g7 and after long castle to take on b3. Now all three recaptures are possible, but basically black's counterplay consists of just pushing either both pawns a and b, or just the a pawn. So just to illustrate, in case of c takes b3, this is a common way of ensuring against possible attack, because these three pawns are against these three pawns. It's almost impossible to open a file on the queen side. White will play king b1, but still black obtains counterplay thanks to this maneuver queen b8. I think it was called the Chinese dragon, when at least I first saw this idea of queen b8, but it's a well-known idea in the dragon, queen b8 to support the b5, b4 push. So king b1, b5, rook he1, b4, knight d5, knight d5, e5, queen b7. Yeah, and black will castle. He may often sacrifice the pawn on e7 after something like bishop g5 and some capture, but thanks to this long-range bishop and the idea of a5, a4, he obtains good compensation. Sharp position, so you should explore this a bit further, but black is doing fine. Against knight b3, b5 immediately is possible because the knight on d4 no longer controls the b5 square, so b5 is possible. Then maybe b4, a5, a4, just hitting the knights again is fine for black. And the most natural move, perhaps a b3, capturing towards the center, and now a5. The idea is to get the pawn as far as possible. A pretty unclear position arises after king b1, a4, b4, a3, b3, queen c7. Yeah. So black will castle ultimately, then the rook may come to the c file. Again, pretty sharp position, but the chances are mutual. So, okay, this was the let's say overview of this idea in the dragon. You see, it's pretty short. It's not very theoretical. Not that many lines to remember or to revise. Of course, some extra work is required to in addition to this video. To especially in sharp opening like the dragon, you should always check your lines carefully. But I think this is a very, very nice idea for black to avoid all this theory in the Yugoslav attack and just have an easier life in the dragon, while at the same time keeping all these dynamic possibilities. So, well, short and sweet this time, I guess. Shorter video than usual. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite you to smash that subscribe button and leave your comments, like the video, share your impressions in the comments, share your impressions to your friends. Hopefully they subscribe too. And also don't forget that by becoming a paid subscriber to my Substack newsletter, you can see the link above, you can ask for the topic of the next video. So you can ask for your games to be analyzed, your opening idea analyzed, your opening preference being shown and analyzed on video. So basically, I think that's pretty good way to get a, let's say, Grandmaster opinion on what you would like to play next, perhaps in your own games. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and see you soon, guys. Take care.